Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
Salisbury leaders are hammering out next year's budget, along with some hikes and taxes and fees. This is Don Rush. You're listening to Delmarva Today. In our studio this afternoon is the acting mayor of Salisbury, Jack Heath. He succeeds Jake Day, who went on to become Maryland's Secretary of Housing and Community Development. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Don. Great to be here.
So first of all, I want to turn to the budget. The last I heard was perhaps a 5-cent increase in property taxes, 10% increase in water and sewer fees. At least that's what the president of the council was telling me. Where are we with the budget at this point?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much correct. We are having a 5-cent increase in the tax rate. We have reduced the water and sewer to 10%, and the other thing that we had to do, it was a difficult choice, but we had to make some cuts in the budget, and those included about $1.6 million of expenses and a reduction in the raises that we were giving of about 2%. Now, that being said, the raises that we're giving this year in order to keep competitive with our neighbors is probably one of the most significant raises that we've had in years.
So what is it that's driving this need to increase the taxes and the fees? Have we just simply be behind? Is it part of the pandemic?
You know, I think there's a couple of things that have contributed to it. One, we were very lucky in a sense during the time of COVID because we had the ARP money, and that's all gone. So you get hit with that. And the fact that we really haven't raised the tax rate in, I think, once in the last 9 years. So, hindsight's always 20/20. But if you look back, we probably should have had a couple of minor increases in the tax rate just to keep up. But getting hit with all these things at once, we had to make some tough decisions.
What kind of increases in terms of costs are we looking at?
Give you an example. The best example that I can give you is the chemicals that we use for the water treatment plant. Over the years, we've come to know that we can reduce the amount of chemicals that we need based on our experience. Well, we've done that, and with that reduction of about 20%, we have seen for the same amount of chemicals a 26% increase in cost in 1 year. So those, and that's, we're not immune to inflation as everybody else is finding out right now. So if you look at the worst case scenarios, we've been hit by a bunch of them.
Also, one of the things that the president of the council, Mayor Boda, mentioned was this concept of recruitment. How serious is that in terms of particularly the police and fire departments?
The police and fire department is the real issue. When we have our neighbors who are starting at about $55,000, it puts a tremendous amount of pressure on us. We're down right now 14 police officers, and we don't have a significantly large police force. So that has tremendous impact. And then on the fire side, it's just as bad. But it's not just there. It's also in the public works area. So every place that we are competing, and the other thing, I'll be honest with you, which I don't understand, is where did all the people go that were working before COVID? I know there were a lot of retirements and things, but that's impacted us tremendously.
You saw a disappearance in the personnel after COVID or during COVID?
Yeah, not during COVID so much, but after COVID, to get back to full strength, we've seen it and we've been hurt by it.
Why is it that salaries have not kept up or been competitive with other areas? I mean, we're a big city. We're one of the biggest on the peninsula.
Yeah. Well, one of the prime examples, and I know our friends in Worcester County are not going to appreciate it, but they're one of the ones that caused us to go out. But we're not alone. The sheriff's department's going through the same thing. State police department's going through the same thing. Given the fact that the current situation, it's difficult to be an officer. And I think that what you're seeing is a dual response to that. One, less people are getting involved. And the second thing is obviously compensation.
Now, you also had this fee that you wanted to impose to get some more money into the fire department, $300, I guess, the fire and safety fee. What happened to that? I understand that the county attorney, I guess, had some questions about that.
Yeah, he did. And rather than get into a battle, we decided to go the route that we've chosen. And we've had some good meetings with the county, and hopefully they're gonna help us out a little.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because do you still have hope, and how much of it is hope? I mean, have you gotten a response, say, from the county executive, Julie Giordano, or the president of the county council, John Cannon? I mean, what indicates to you that there might be some possibility here of increasing it? Because I think you got $1 million, I think is what you're
Yeah, we got
at.
$1 million for this year. Let's put it this way: we have been in constant discussion with them, and I'm fairly optimistic. I'm not sure where we're going to end up, but I think they're willing to listen, and so I'm encouraged by that.
And by the way, give the listeners just a sense of why that's important, because I know that, particularly for the fire department, they go out beyond the city limits.
Yeah, it's this has been going on obviously for years. This year, just to give you an idea, we're going to hit about 15,000 calls. 5,000 of those calls are outside the city limit. So a third of our calls, and with a budget of $15 million, it's very difficult to make ends meet. So that's why we're having the discussions.
Finally, in terms of taxes, I expect that you will get pushback. Indeed, you got pushback when you're talking about the $300 fee on the fire side of things. You expect a lot of pushback. How do you explain to voters that, hey, this has to be done? And there's oftentimes the voters might hear you, but they don't agree anyway.
Yeah, put it this way: when we first announced the 15 cent, we had tremendous feedback, and we listened to them, and we understood. It's very difficult when you sit in the chair and you have to make a decision whether you're going to cut $1 million out of the budget that could affect the programs that we have and the service levels that we have. But we listened to them, and we did that. And I will tell you, based on the last meeting that we had, which was the first reading of this proposal, the feedback was much less severe in terms of criticism. And I think the people are starting to understand now, based on the story that we've laid out and the history, that they're more accepting, and they can see why we need to do it. It's a question of it always hurts, and it hurts the people that can afford it the least, and we're very sensitive to that. So I think we've done the best we can, and I'm hopeful that the citizens will understand that.
You mentioned, by the way, that there will be some budget cuts. Does that involve necessarily personnel, or how serious is that? What kind of impact is it going to have?
It's going to have less impact on personnel than it is on equipment, programs, et cetera. So you'll see some changes in that, and we may be pushing off some projects that need to get done. I told the staff the other day that there's going to be no fluff this year. It's got to be all stuff that infrastructure things that need to get done. That's what we're going to focus on.
Because one of the things that strikes me is that when you put off programs like, for instance, even equipment replacement, down the road it's going to cost you, whether it's because there's inflation or something else happens. I mean, is that a concern that there's some of the stuff you've put off, well, maybe might come back to bite you, as it were?
It could. Pay me now or pay me later. Right. And, with inflation the way it is, although I think that we're going to start to see, I can sense already that, for instance, in terms of lead times, the lead times are coming down, which means more availability and quicker availability. So I think that once we start to get back to a normal mode in terms of supplies and suppliers, I think that'll help us.
I want to return, by the way, to the pandemic for a moment. How do you see the city having weathered that? A lot of cities were hit pretty hard. What was your experience?
Well, we went on a lot of the work was done from home for the administrative side. But I will tell you, our crews that are out on the road, God bless them, they did a phenomenal job. We didn't skip a beat in terms of. We did have some retirements, as I mentioned before, and that hurt us a little bit. But the critical in terms of the priority for public safety, which is number one with me and with the city right now, didn't miss a treat. Now we had some people that ended up with COVID and had to take time off, but on the whole, we survived pretty well, and I'm very pleased with the way it turned out.
You mentioned a moment ago that post COVID that you had a lot of retirements of people leaving in one fashion or another. Do you have any sense about why that was?
Well, I really don't. I think it's for a myriad of reasons. I know a couple of people, but I also know that a couple of people that have retired have come back in one way or another. So that's I think that's a positive sign too. When you're home working and then you have to come back to a in-person thing, it's difficult for some people.
I want to turn, by the way, you had a decent report to the crime rate, which apparently has declined fairly dramatically, I guess, over the last 10 years, at least when it comes to serious crime. Tell me a little bit about that, and why do you think that's happened?
I think there's a number of reasons why we were able to reduce the crime. When I say we, obviously it's a team effort led by Chief Duncan. I think the number one thing is that we've adopted and we've changed the way that we police. A lot more community policing, getting to know the community, having their buy-in and helping us with information, which is always good. And then some of the tools that we have this predictive policing model that we've had, which really is kind of amazing. It was developed in one of the universities in Pennsylvania. And it gives us the ability to take data that we have from all of our calls, and then using that data, it's with the algorithms that are in place, we can actually predict within a certain area where the next crime is most likely. And then we can increase patrols in that area, and then that has an impact as well.
In terms of community engagement, because there's always some tension that exists between particularly minority communities.
Yep.
I mean, we see that obviously nationally, but how do you assess that in terms of where the Salisbury police are?
Well, I think it's really good. We had a pop-up bus stop and a neighborhood walk in Doverdale area, and those kinds of things help a lot. And the police are involved in that. They're also helping to coach kids in lacrosse. Judge Massarello has been a big advocate of that, and the police go up and play, and it's not uncommon to see them getting out and throwing a football in the street or something like that, which makes an impact. People feel less threatened when they see that these guys are normal. Guys and gals are normal people that enjoy the same things they do.
Now, as you mentioned a moment ago, there's Chief Barbara Duncan. She is leaving. One, what do you see as her legacy? And two, does she impact what you're going to be looking for in the future?
Oh, absolutely. We've hired a search firm, and we were very specific in the kind of person that we wanted to replace her. You can't argue with success, and if you look at the numbers, not just the numbers, but also the relationship. We want someone to maintain that kind of relationship. Naturally, it's a paramilitary organization, that needs guidance and rules, and that's to be expected as well. But we're looking for a similar type administrator.
How do you assess her? I mean, she sort of came in. She was much different than certainly the previous person.
Oh, yeah,
dramatically.
Radically, and I think that's what it takes, to turn something around. Most of the time, you need someone with a different approach, and I wouldn't say we were lucky because we sort of knew what we wanted. We didn't know if we could get it, but we knew what the relationship between the minority communities was a big one. But not just with the minority communities, with people in general. the neighborhood meetings that we had and that she participated in, and her staff. And the staff has continued while she's sort of stepped back now and is letting others take charge in some areas. And I think that's all been positive.
And I think she was, the first woman to occupy the job, right?
Yes, correct.
Do you think that had an influence on how she saw the job? I mean, I realize that's sort of an overgeneralization of just shooting at you.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, okay.
I just think she was very direct when she was hired about what her approach was. It was very in line with the things that we said we needed, and she followed through. You know.
The other thing, by the way, we have this, I guess the Wycomico County Council, as they're all putting together this police accountability board.
Yeah.
How does that impact you at this point?
Well, we're part of the board.
Right.
And we'll see where it goes. I mean, this is an unknown, and we're going to learn as we go. I anticipate we'll have some issues because it's new, but we'll get through them. And I don't see very many changes.
Because I know that, for instance, Sheriff Michael Lewis, he was not particularly crazy about the idea of the accountability board. He certainly said he would go ahead and work with them and so on and so forth. But there does seem to be some, reservation, by some folks in the law enforcement.
Well, I think it's fear of the unknown. To be frank, it's like everything else. You go in with a positive attitude, and you see where you end up. We're going to learn from it. There's no question about it. How much we're going to learn, that depends on both sides. And I think that there'll be some rough spots. My guess would be there'll be some rough spots through it, but I think we'll get through it, and then we'll come out for it better at the end. I think there may be some changes to it over time, but we'll see what happens.
Because in terms of what you've seen over the last 10 years or so, have there been, I've not checked the record, so have there been serious incidents or that might be looked at by, say, a board like this?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. But no, I really can't think of anything that would be seriously impacted. I think one of the biggest concerns is going back into somebody's personnel file. And that's difficult because in any job, things happen that you go through and say, "Whoops, that was a mistake. We shouldn't make that again." But I think that it's going to be a learning process.
Also, recently you had the tiny houses at the Ann Street Village. Tell me a little bit about how you became aware of this initiative. I guess it was under Jake Day.
Yeah, it was, and we had some good meetings about it. I can remember when the concept first came up, and one of our employees, Christine Chestnut, former employees now, Christine Chestnut, made a trip to New Mexico and saw the tiny homes and came back and was an avid promoter of this. And then we did a lot of investigation, and I can remember the meetings and saying, where to put it, what were some of the positives and negatives, how is it going to run, et cetera. And we got through all that. And it was heartwarming when we had the ribbon cutting. We had over 200 people show up for the ribbon cutting, it was packed. And I think that shows the importance of it to people. And I will say this also, the neighbors around the tiny homes have been phenomenal. The churches, the regular citizens who live around it have all come out and supported it. And it's a great thing. We have our first 5 people in the houses with a 24-hour person who's responsible, who's gone through the program. And we were over there the other day. I was giving a tour, and it's working really, really well.
Give a sense, by the way, for listeners as to what it is that you're providing to the homeless.
Well, it's a tiny. When we say tiny home, it's a tiny home. One person. There's a bed. There is fire suppression. There is a table. There is a microwave oven, a refrigerator. There's air conditioning and heat. So they have everything in that unit that they need for themselves. The other thing they have is, which I thought was interesting, and I didn't know till the last tour, they have the ability to lift up the roofs because people who are used to living outside some people don't like in the cramped quarters. So they can actually raise the roof a little to give them more space, which I thought was kind of unique. And that's when you go to that's why you go to a specialist to get those kinds of homes. And then we have, I told somebody the other day, the toilet facilities and the shower facilities are better than I had in the dorm when I was in school. But it makes a difference to them. It really does. To make things as normal as they possibly can. And the other thing we always say, this is transitional homes. This is not permanent housing. And the program, they have different milestones they have to meet. And then the goal is to hopefully get them out and transition in a year. We'll give them up to 2, depending on extenuating circumstances. But we're going to provide the wraparound services to help them achieve that.
How do you see the city doing in terms of dealing with the homeless? The tiny houses are obviously only one component.
Yeah, it is. We're very lucky. We have a lot of people that are involved with the homeless, the Adopt-A-Block people, Christian Shelter, tiny homes. We have our homeless. We actually have a group that is responsible for tracking homeless and helping them and providing services, not just in Ann Street Village, but throughout the city. So, and Halo, I have to mention Halo, and there's a few others. But I think that we understand what the issue is. Also, the numbers. We had 51 people the first week sign up for the tiny homes. We only have 24 units. Well, if there's 51 people that signed up, there's another 100 people out there at least that haven't made up their minds yet or just don't want to do it. So that's a concern.
By the way, one of the dramatic announcements out of Annapolis was that the Delegate Cherie Sample Hughes is not going to be Speaker Pro Tem of the House next year, at least according to the Speaker. And I'm wondering whether or not that diminishes our presence, the Eastern Shore presence, in terms of the leadership. I know we have Jake Day, who's in the cabinet, obviously, but you said it impacting us, or what kind of relationship do we have?
It definitely does impact us. Cherie is a person you can call and get action. Trying not to be political, but being slightly political. The supposed reason for her being dismissed is she didn't vote the way the rest of the Democrats voted on a lot of issues. She voted for what was best for her constituents. In my lifetime, I thought that was the right thing to do. I still do. So if that's the reason, it's a shame. But Cherie is a hard worker and a good lady, and I expect her to continue in her new role when she gets back to being a delegate. A senator. Then fine.
Also, obviously, we, as I mentioned a moment ago, we have Jake Day, who is in the cabinet. Obviously, has a particular portfolio, but nonetheless, you're hopeful that he'll bring that presence, certainly for Salisbury, but maybe the Eastern Shore.
I think he's going to bring it to everyone, but certainly for the Eastern Shore. He understands us. I have him on speed dial, so he knows, and we still speak a lot. But he's doing a great job. It's a perfect job for him. So.
But that seemed to be one of the things that he was really most intensely interested in when he was mayor.
Well, that's his background. Planning is his background, and where he fits in very, very well.
So before we leave, as we said, you succeeded Jake Day as mayor, and wanted to see what the transition was like in terms of certainly Day's legacy and into where you are. And we're going to give you sort of the first report card here from none other than the council president, Mira Bodum. And this is what I asked him about the transition between you and Day.
Finally, I got to ask you, so how is it now that Jake Day is not the mayor and you're working with Jack, of course, who's acting? Is the atmosphere changed? What kind of legacy did he leave behind in terms of you guys moving forward?
Yeah, look, Mayor Day, or now Secretary Day, he was full of energy, and just talking with Jack, took him a minute to adjust to Jake's schedule and had to, kind of scale it back a little bit and adjust it to himself. Two completely different individuals, two different perhaps personalities. But Jack, I think, is he's Jake sometimes was in the weeds mayor, and not saying that that's good or bad, but that was his style. Jack is if Jack gets into the weeds on an issue, you're in trouble. I think really Jack, he allows. Not saying that Mayor Day didn't or Secretary Day didn't, but Jack allows the department heads to run their departments. It's their departments, and he's there to support them, and he brings a world of experience from running large corporations, running Lower Shore Enterprises, and he's been a great mentor to me over the years. And so and Jack and I have always had a good working relationship. I had a great working relationship with Day when he was here. So I don't, it's just they're different people, different styles, but it takes a little bit to getting used to. For I think some of the department heads. But I think it's all around. It's a good deal.
So, what is your assessment of your first report card here?
I think he's known me long enough, and I think that he's pretty much right on.
How has the transition been?
I thought it would be easier, but I think the biggest thing was when I came in, it was just when the budget was getting going. And, some of the stuff, like he said, I don't enjoy the weeds. I enjoy the letting people do their jobs. And so I did that, and I'm learning as I'm going. I mean, it's different. When you're the president of the council for 8 years, it's the legislative side of the organization. When I get totally into it, I'm going to be more comfortable in the mayor's position because it's like being a CEO, and it's on the operations side, which was my life, my career. So I think the transition, because of the way things were happening, COVID being gone, the budget pressures, the personnel issues, to hit that like first week, it can be kind of it's like firefighting. You're trying to put the fires out. As we go on every week, I feel more comfortable. I will say this: he was correct. The team that Secretary Day left is a phenomenal team. Then when he took Julia, that even added more pressure.
Right,
but we're doing okay. I'm doing okay. I'm trying to not get in the weeds. If you get sucked into the weeds, you can lose focus on what the big picture is. So my priorities are, as I stated, are pretty straightforward. Public safety, housing, infrastructure, and jobs. I mean, those are the top priorities, and we're going to do whatever we can to focus on those.
So, you enjoyed enough the job to run for it? You're going to run for it?
Yeah, I was on the first day you were allowed to run. I signed up after talking with my wife, and I'm not sure my kids think this was the greatest move, but I didn't want to lose what we've done, and I will tell you that when I win in November, my kids told me to be positive, so I will. When I win in November, that will be my last foray into politics, and hopefully we'll get someone who can come in and
Just you figured probably one term, you think?
One term, I think, for sure. Yeah. I always tell my kids, once you commit to something, you're not allowed to quit. And I try to follow the same theory.
Well, we've been speaking with the mayor of Salisbury, Jack Heath, who is going to be running for a full term and replacing, of course, Jake Day, who went on to join the cabinet in the Maryland governor's office. And we appreciate you taking the time to stop by and talking with us.
Don, it's always great. Thank you.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.